Thank you. And feels very weird trying to follow that, when you think about what people have done and brief people and stand up. So I was asked to give this Newton lecture, and my first answer was no, because I left school, no qualifications, got into the ambulance service a bit by default, and I've had the most wonderful career. So I'm going to share a bit of that with you and link that to cardiac arrest. And it's definitely, and I can say this because Jason got away with it, it's about getting your shit together. We can try and shift some stuff, that's fine, but use individuals. We need to think what's going to get us that next step, what's going to get us from where we are now. And, we can have really clever French folk doing ECMO. That's going to be really, really useful. And we'll get some clever Scottish folk going to do ECMO. And, adrenaline might work, might not work, all that's here there. Well, I think what we've heard up until now, and something I'm going to really touch on, is if we don't get hands on chest and early shock, then all the other advances in science are not really going to work too well. So I'll just very briefly touch on some conflicts and associations. So for me, I quite like to think I'm associated with these people, but they probably feel very conflicted that they have to associate themselves with me. So as Shorty said, I've been in the Scottish Ambulance Service for about 30 years. I managed to escape for twice. So I did a couple of years at the Scottish Government with Jason, and did a bit of a trip out to Zambia to look how they looked at cardiac arrest. But fundamentally, I'm a Scottish Ambulance Service paramedic. I've been for over 30 years through and through. I've been involved with a research group for a while. Again, I'll touch on it, whether it was steel and blue lights and tyres for Professor Lyne's car, or whether it was moving into that research piece. I'm a professor. I know I don't sound like a professor. I'll probably kind of do the counting and the hard thinking that a lot of professors do. But I'm very privileged to be asked to be one of the professor at Robert Gordon University, and I'm doing my PhD there. I think, just for the paramedics in the room, it shows how far we've come as a profession and what we can contribute. I like travelling, so I'm professor at Monash as well, so I get to go out to Monash every now and then in Australia. And I've been lucky enough to do a couple of fellowships. I'll talk about how, travelling around the world, I thought to learn from them, but they were so impressed about what we've done here in Scotland. So I know I am old, right? And I can't remember this exact quote, but what Kennedy was trying to, but what happened here was, so Kennedy's visiting NASA, the guy there's doing the cleaning. He says, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm helping put a man on the moon. So, picking up on, it's the small stuff that's going to make the difference. So I became a paramedic in 1992, and as you can see, I had a dramatic effect on survival throughout hospital cardiac arrest. So I was, bag of drugs, laryngoscope, you see later on, stethoscope around my neck. And it was all about the airway. It was all about the clever stuff, intubate. And as you can see, it had a dramatic effect over sort of longer than 10 years, really, because that's what we were focused on. It's all about the blue lights and sirens. So only bit of data I'm going to show. But as you can see, stuff wasn't going in the right direction. I didn't get a single R. I thought I would have got an R. Because as a baby paramedic, only focused on airway and my part of the chain of survival, the message was clear. They all die anyway. I remember rocking up Edinburgh North Station with newly qualified paramedics. Like I say, I had a Heart Start 3000 QR. It was a defib I was given. I was working with a guy called Gordon Ridges, and he says, you'll not be needing any of that, son. That defibrillation thing, it's probably, they do that when we get to the Royal, and it never works anyway. It probably didn't work if you wait to get the Royal to do it. But that was the message, loud and clear. They all die anyway. And I think probably, and I don't know exactly, but for about the first year, that was the case. Does anybody know where this is? Whereabouts? The Mound in Edinburgh. Really observing people. No, it's just outside the whiskey rooms, where we might end up later. But Yeah, so to the Mound. So I got a treble 9 call for a cardiac arrest on the Mound in Edinburgh during the festival. Like I say, I'd been a paramedic for about a year, 18 months. And what made it different going to this cardiac arrest was a big circle of people. As we pulled up, got out the moor, I was out on a guy called Jim Curry. There was a 15-year-old boy doing CPR. And I'd not been to arrest where they were doing CPR. Excuse me. So doing CPR, get the pads on, one shock. Patient, GCS15. Didn't really know what to do because I was supposed to intubate at this point. And, you know, that obviously patient hadn't read the ALS guidelines. So it was really difficult. You know, there'll be other sessions about difficult intubations. Intubating a patient who's GCS15 after they've just been shocked, really difficult. So got to the Royal. Another, you know, iconic person around cardiac arrest in Scotland. Colin Robertson was a receiving consultant, and I'm on about the Royal when it was in Lauriston Place. Okay, we get to the Royal. Patient sitting up, GCS15, going to resus. Hiya, this chap's post-cardiac arrest. I was like, are you sure? Yeah, because we only used AED in automatic mode, so the patient was definitely in VF. But that's where we were then. You know, that idea of ongoing CPR, early first shock, it just was new. It just, you know, didn't happen. Didn't happen when we were, anybody who knows the geography of Edinburgh, you know, from the old Royal to the top of the Mound, we were probably 3-4 minutes away with that defibrillator. Now, if we were 3-4 minutes away, we'd think, you know, we now know that's even too long. So at the time, very young, debonair, Professor Lyons was doing his MD and was looking at temperature control for cardiac arrest, the top CAT study. And the interesting thing is, he was looking at, you know, temperature when folk go into cardiac, and this is where I'm not great at being a professor and doing a PhD. So in Scotland, you go into cardiac arrest, you're not getting any bystander CPR normally, there's no circulating volume. I could have told them that people would have been called. I could have saved them doing all that study. But it moved on, and it moved on very quickly to, you know, what happens in pre-hospital cardiac arrest in Edinburgh was an absolute epicenter. And this is Richard getting presented with the award for the piece of research most likely to influence change at the Faculty of Pre-Hospital Care down in Birmingham. And what it wasn't about the temperature control. It was about getting the information out of the defibs and getting feedback to ambulance crews. As all good pre-hospital care doctors do, he took his ambulance driver with him. And, you know, I think that was one of the first times that a paramedic was able to go and speak at one of these big, large doctor conferences. And it really became, you know, a chat around that multidisciplinary team. And now that Jason's gone, I can say, you know, trying to get money out of the government to upgrade the defibrillators so we could collect information and move to a very, very different ABC model that was about audit, getting the basics right, then doing the clever stuff, wasn't without its challenges. But managed to get there. So we took that big move from, you know, the cardiac arrest really being managed when it got to the resus room to being out in the community, but still being delivered primarily by the ambulance service, eventually when we got there. Well, that led to the development of 3RU. So how many paramedics in the room are 3RU paramedics who have done 3RU? You know, more than a couple. So that's where it came from. It came from stealing tyres and blue lights, sticking them on Lyon's car and getting him to run about and manage the, you know, the non-technical skills at cardiac arrest. And that became award-winning again, you know, so if you do good stuff, and I've really struggled about giving this lecture, right? But if you get involved in good stuff, it's all right to tell people you've done good stuff. Because if you tell them you've done good stuff, it'll help them do good stuff. Jason called it courage, right? But it's just spreading the word about the good stuff we're doing. And that led, well, it didn't lead to, but at the same time stuff was happening, and they had this, the second SCAS, which was, without doubt, one of the pivotal moments to me was when I actually got to a big conference. Sound.
And you are the ones that are going to make this.
So, cardiac arrest being everybody's business. Education, training, the conference being free for the whole multidisciplinary team to go to. Running a resuscitation academy before that conference. This was all really new stuff. And it was interesting because at that time, this is like this really horrible dark building is the government building. And then I'd been stuck in there with Jason. And after SCAS23, the chat was Joannick Welfare, and I think Colin Crookson's in the room. Colin was doing a patient safety fellowship. And best in class was held up by a mile of being in Seattle. So, you can take the boy out of Newcastle, but you can't take Newcastle out of the boy. So the idea was go to Seattle and steal all their stuff. Just go there, steal it, bring it back, and we'll just do that in Scotland. But the interesting thing is when you got to Seattle, it was very, very different. The funding stream was different, the way they train was different, so that wasn't going to work in Scotland. Other places that I was lucky enough to go and visit, I went to the Air Ambulance Victoria, because they're best in class, so we'll steal their stuff. When I brought it down, all the slides were upside down and stuff. I couldn't really work out how to get it to work. And we went and seen what Scandinavians were doing. And that gets you your pals. So when you go out and meet these people, you realise that what they're doing is amazing, but it's no more amazing than what we've done here. Does anybody know where this is? Questions are getting harder. So it's Justine Abbey. So if anybody knows that, that's where the Justine template comes from. It's how you measure cardiac arrest. It's the global standard. You get the brightest and best people in the world to go and talk about cardiac arrest. And because Gareth wasn't available, I got to go. Because people wanted to know what we were doing in Scotland. Scotland was unique. Instead of looking at Seattle, scale problem, which is a city, or Melbourne, which is a big city, but it's a city, we were looking at it from a Scottish perspective. So it didn't matter where you were, rural or urban, remote, we think everybody should be given that best chance if they collapse and cardiac arrest. It might take us longer to get there from an ambulance service point of view, and nearest ICU might be more than even 10 miles away like they have in London. Who knows? You might have some real challenges with geography, but everybody deserves a chance. So they launched the first out-of-hospital cardiac arrest strategy for a country. Many, many people in this room were involved in that. It was bold and challenging and not all the things you want it to be, but what it wasn't a government strategy. They did the printing and the laminating. very much involved communities with a tiny bit of science, because by now it became very, very obvious that the so-called professionals, the ambulance service, didn't hold the whole answers. We all need to own that chain of survival. No one organisation was going to. And then this happened. No. So, Save a Life for Scotland, we all know about it. Brought together so many organisations. And that wasn't an in-hospital research room problem. It wasn't an ambulance service problem. It was a Scottish-wide problem, and that's how we were dealing with it. Everybody pulling together to make a massive difference. And that's what we've done. But we've not done enough. Still loads more we can do. So what do I think is going to be the biggest difference I'm going to see in the next 30 years? I'm going to retire, which is going to be good. I might still get wheeled out. If you look at Douglas Chamberlain, he still gets rolled out now and then. So I might try and get to another SCAS after I retire. Who knows? But using technology and innovation, and I'm bound to say that because I'm the innovation bloke and my gaffer's in the room from the ambulance service. Well, how can we use innovation and technology, not in the treatment of cardiac arrest, but help and support our army volunteers? And you'll hear later on about, using Good Sam. It's a bit like the big debate we had about, who can defibrillate. I don't care. If I have my cardiac arrest, you've all got permission to jump on my chest and defibrillate me as soon as you want. Okay? But how are we going to get people there to do it? Crowdsourcing apps in different countries, there's different things, but you're going to hear today about Good Sam. You're going to hear this challenge a lot. Nobody should leave here without signing up to Good Sam. And nobody should spend time on shift. I don't care what you do, or nobody should spend time at your community group when you go away from here without getting everybody else to sign up for Good Sam. Because you need to get those hands on the chest. You need to defibrillate early, and then they can do some sexy pre-hospital ECMO and stuff. It's not my slides, which is really off-putting now. So the key thing, go away from here. You don't need to be motivated. You're here because you're motivated. But just move forward, save lives, have fun, be awesome.